Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Reports out of Syria claim more than 1,000 people have been killed in 2 days of clashes in the Alawite sector. A war monitor says the fighting between Syria's new Islamist rulers and Assad loyalists led to the death of 745 civilians. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says that a delegation will be sent to Doha on Monday to advance ceasefire negotiations. This comes after an invitation from Arab mediators was accepted. China warns Taiwan separatists to step back from the precipice. It also says that the military will tighten the noose if separatism escalates around the island. In Germany, election winner Friedrich Merz's Conservatives and the Social Democrats advanced in complex coalition talks. The two parties promise a tougher immigration stance, industry support, and to boost the economy. The UN has warned of increased violence and political friction in South Sudan. This comes just days after the arrests of several officials linked to the country's vice president, raise fears regarding the 2018 peace deal. In Europe, war continues as 14 are killed and 37 are injured in the Ukrainian east with Russian missiles. This comes as the US piles pressure on both countries for a swift end to the conflict. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei slams what he described as bullying tactics a day after President Trump threatens military action. This occurs after Trump wrote to the Ayatollah urging new talks on the country's nuclear program. Hundreds of thousands are left without power as Storm Alfred lashes Australia's Queensland state. The downgraded tropical cyclone has brought damaging winds, heavy rains, and flood warnings. Syrian security forces are battling to crush a nascent insurgency by fighters from Bashar al-Assad's Alawite sector. Reportedly, more than 1,000 people have been killed in 2 days of clashes between gunmen and security forces linked to Syria's new Islamist regime and fighters from Assad's Alawite sect in the country's coastal region. The casualties included 745 civilians, 125 members of the security forces, and 148 fighters loyal to Assad. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said. The widespread killings in the Mediterranean coastal city of Jabal Benayes and the surrounding areas in Syria's Alawite heartland amounted to the worst violence for years in the 13-year-old civil war conflict. Reportedly, the victims included women and children from the Alawite minority. The violence in Syria is raising more doubts about the Islamist government's ability to rule fairly. There are dozens of reports that Alawite men were executed in one village. Syria's interim president Ahmed al-Shara supported the government's crackdown and urged insurgents from toppled Assad's Alawite minority to lay down their arms before it's too late. After the clashes,
سيحاسب حسابا شديدا كل من يتجاوز على المدنيين العزل ويأخذ أقواما بجريرة أقوام فإن أهلنا في الساحل في مناطق الاشتباك جزء من مسؤوليتنا والواجب علينا حمايتهم وإنقاذهم من شرور عصابات النظام.
China's military warned on Sunday that it would increase pressure on Taiwan if the island's push for independence grows, urging supporters of separatism to back down or face serious consequences, according to the state media. China sees Taiwan as part of its territory and has not ruled out using military force to take control of it. Army spokesperson Wu Quain says the more Taiwan pushes for independence, the stronger China's military response will be. He warned that those supporting independence are heading towards danger and should change course before it's too late. Wu made these comments during China's biggest annual political meeting, known as the Two Sessions. This comes in the backdrop of this year's proceedings, which saw Beijing announce that its defense spending will rise by 7.2% in 2025 as its armed forces undergo rapid modernization to counter regional threats. Tensions between the US and Iran are escalating. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has accused the US of bullying tactics. This comes just one day after President Donald Trump revealed he had sent a letter to Khamenei offering to negotiate a nuclear deal. Khamenei, speaking in Tehran, said Washington's offer was not about solving problems, but about domination. Despite expressing openness to negotiations, Trump has reinstated a tough maximum pressure campaign. This follows Trump's 2018 decision to withdraw from the nuclear deal and reimpose sanctions, which led to Iran to exceed the deal's nuclear limits. The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog warns the time is running out for diplomacy as Iran continues to advance its uranium enrichment. Tehran insists its nuclear activities are peaceful. Let's take a listen to what the Ayatollah Khamenei had to say. North Korea has unveiled its nuclear-powered submarine under construction, a major security threat to South Korea and the US. The state media released photos of the submarine, which leader Kim Jong-un expected at major shipyards. While the details are scarce, experts reveal it will carry nuclear-capable missiles. This submarine could carry about 10 missiles and can pose a significant challenge to regional security, as missile launches from underwater are harder to detect. North Korea's push for advanced weaponry, including nuclear-powered submarines, is part of Kim's response to what he calls escalating US-led military threats. Questions arise over how North Korea, facing severe sanctions, could acquire the technology for such a vessel. Experts speculate that Russian assistance might be involved. The submarine is expected to undergo testing within a year or two. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is fully committed to constructive dialogue with US representatives in Saudi Arabia next week, hoping to agree on the next steps towards peace. Zelensky confirmed plans to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Monday, with Ukrainian diplomatic and military officials staying on for talks with the US team following day. The discussions followed two earlier rounds of US-Russia talks held in Saudi Arabia. Zelensky stressed the need for swift and effective action, saying realistic proposals for peace are already on the table. Meanwhile, tensions remained high on the ground. Russia launched a deadly missile and drone attack on Ukraine overnight, killing at least 25 people and injuring 37, including children. Let's take a listen to what Zelensky has said.
Найближчим часом буде багато зустрічей, багато розмов. Вірю, що будуть рішення. Також постійно на контакті з американською командою ми готуємо зустріч в Саудівській Аравії. Впевнений, що зустріч буде результативною. Ми в Україні на це налаштовані.
Moving on, yesterday, fast-moving wildfires broke out across Long Island's East End, impacting areas such as Centre Moriches, East Moriches, Eastport, and West Hampton. High winds rapidly fueling the flames, sending thick smoke into the sky and forcing evacuations, including at a nearby military base. Sunrise Highway was also closed as a result of the fires. In response, Governor Kathy Hochul declared a state of emergency, with the National Guard providing helicopter support. Although 3 fires were contained, the West Hampton fire was 50% controlled. 1 firefighter was injured and 2 commercial buildings were partially burned. The fires stretched over 2.5 miles, threatening homes, a chemical factory, and an Amazon warehouse. Novak Djokovic, a 5-time champion, was knocked out by lucky loser Botic van der Saldierloop 6-2, 3-6 and 6-1 in his first match at Indian Wells, citing poor performance and 37 unforced errors. Van der Zandschulp, who had said previously beaten Alcatraz, and Nadal kept his composure to secure the win. 2-time defending champion Carlos Alcaraz breezed past Quentin Hellas 6-4, 6-2. Other upsets saw Matteo Arnaldi defeat Andrei Rublev 6-4, 6-5, while Rublev and Rude also exited in the second round. In the women's draw, world number one Ariana Sabalenka and Madison Keys advanced alongside Taylor Fritz and Coco Gauff in the men's and women's events. Across Latin America, thousands of women took to the streets on International Women's Day to demand justice and an end to gender violence. In Mexico City, protesters marched to the presidential palace, sharing heartbreaking stories of femicide victims. In January alone, 54 femicides were reported, with 839 cases in 2024. In Lima, Peru, protesters chanted for equality and condemned gender crimes following a 13% rise in femicides from the previous year. In Buenos Aires, Argentina, feminist groups targeted President Javier Milei, citing concerns over a decline in women's rights under his government. In Argentina, 295 femicides were reported in 2024, a decrease from 2023, but the struggle for justice continues. A man was arrested following a dramatic protest on the roof of Big Ben's Elizabeth Tower in central London. The emergency services were summoned early on Saturday after there were reports of a protester who climbed onto the tower carrying a Palestinian flag. The protester was several meters high on the structure and refused to descend. After more than 16 hours, rescue teams were able to bring him down safely by using a cherry picker at midnight. The incident caused Westminster Bridge, surrounding areas, and parliamentary tours to be shut down. The protester, who had asserted that he would come down on his own terms, was greeted by Free Palestine chants from supporters. Police say the operation, which included fire and specialist officers, was complicated but safely resolved. The man has now been arrested and investigations are ongoing. Thousands of Queenslanders are left without power by Cyclone Alfred, which was a downgraded tropical cyclone. It brought heavy rain and destructive winds throughout the state. The Gold Coast was the hardest hit, where 112,000 people have been left without electricity, and the southeast of the state is experiencing widespread disruptions. Flood warnings continue, with flash flooding a possibility in Brisbane and the surrounding areas, including Ipswich, Sunshine Coast and Gympie. Queensland officials are also determining if schools will resume classes after they were closed because of the storm, with the Gold Coast experiencing heavy damage. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has termed the situation as very serious, calling for caution as the storm continues to produce hazardous weather. The aftermath of the storm has already claimed one life in northern New South Wales and several are left injured. The ICC Champions Trophy 2025 final is here, and all eyes are set on India and New Zealand as they face each other at the Dubai International Cricket Stadium. The Indian team has been performing well. No changes are expected at the top order, with Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill likely to open, although the fate of Virat Kohli's injury is still uncertain following a blow on his knee. Shreyas Iyer will play at the number 4, followed by KL Rahul, though Rishabh Pant is going to sit out again. India's all-rounders such as Axar Patel and Hardik Pandya are set to hold their positions, although the addition of Washington Sundar in the place of Kuldeep Yadav is still a possibility. One thing is for certain, it's going to be an exciting final. In southwest Colombia, 28 police officers and 1 soldier held hostage since Thursday were released yesterday. The detainees, who had been taken by a dissident guerrilla group after clashes between security forces and local residents, were freed in the community of La Hacienda in Cacao Department. Residents escorted the men to the nearby town of El Platado, where the United Nations officials and soldiers awaited them. The officers had been detained as part of a military operation aimed at combating drug-related violence in the region, a stronghold of cocoa cultivation. Colombian Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez had warned earlier that the state would use legitimate force to secure their release. The situation escalated, with local gangs and residents confronting security forces, resulting in violent clashes. Argentina's port city of Bahia Blanca has been devastated by record rainfall that has left 13 people dead and hundreds displaced. The storm, which struck on Friday, dumped over 400 millimeters of rain, more than the city typically receives in an entire year, in just 8 hours. Entire neighborhoods were flooded and hospital rooms were submerged, with at least 5 victims dying on flooded roadways. Among the missing are 2 young girls, possibly swept away by the rising waters. National Security Minister called the damage destruction, and local residents expressed frustration at the delayed government response. The extreme weather event is being linked to climate change. Emergency reconstruction aid of $9.2 million has been authorized as the city begins the recovery process. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has accused the US of causing a disruption to scheduled flights bringing Venezuelan migrants home. Maduro linked to the issue to the Trump administration's decision to cancel Chevron's operating license in Venezuela. At an event marking International Women's Day in Caracas, Maduro described the situation as unexplained. Tremendous commotion that damaged communication between the two countries. While he didn't mention Chevron by name in connection with the flights, he did criticize the US's decision, which he claims is a result of insufficient progress on electoral reforms and migrant returns. Maduro's government continues to reject US sanctions, calling them part of an economic war against Venezuela. And that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.